Welcome to my channel. World Scene News. Subscribe to my channel for news updates all around the world. Picture a Bavarian farmer, Klaus, tending his pigs unaware that his livelihood is about to be swept up in a global power struggle. His pork, once bound for Shanghai, is now caught between Brussels, Beijing and Moscow. This isn't just about sausages and sanctions. It's about how decisions in Europe can ripple across continents, upending lives and economies. The EU, trying to punish Russia for the war in Ukraine, rolls out ever tougher sanctions, hoping to squeeze the Kremlin's finances. But international politics is never simple. Instead of just hurting Russia, the EU's actions provoke China, and the consequences spiral. China retaliates, not with tanks, but with pork bans, leaving European farmers stranded and Russia ready to seize the opportunity. How did a move to support Ukraine turn into a pork trade war that benefits Putin? Let's unravel the tangled web of sanctions, retaliation, and unintended winners. In the high-stakes game of global trade, one country's stand can become another's golden opportunity. By mid-2025, the EU was desperate. The war in Ukraine had dragged on for years, and the costs, both human and economic, were mounting. European leaders faced mounting pressure from their citizens, who were growing weary of the conflict and its ripple effects across the continent. Years of sanctions had failed to stop Russia's war in Ukraine. Despite repeated efforts, Moscow's resolve remained unbroken, and the fighting showed no signs of ending. So, Brussels launched its most aggressive move yet. The 18th sanctions package, slashing the price cap on Russian oil and blacklisting over 100 tankers. This was a bold attempt to cut off the Kremlin's vital revenue streams. The EU also expanded its financial blockade, targeting Russian banks and restricting dual-use goods, anything that could help Russia's military. The measures were sweeping, touching nearly every sector of the Russian economy. But this time, the EU went further, directly sanctioning 2 Chinese banks accused of helping Russia bypass Western controls. This marked a significant shift in strategy, as Europe had previously avoided direct confrontation with Beijing. This was a major escalation. Europe had always hesitated to confront Beijing, fearing economic blowback and the potential for a wider trade war that could hurt European industries. But with Ukraine's pleas growing louder, the EU took the risk, hoping to finally choke off Russia's war funding and send a message to Moscow and its allies. The package only passed after tense negotiations, with some EU countries reluctant to antagonize China. The debate exposed deep divisions within the bloc about how far to go. President Zelensky praised the move, the Kremlin scoffed, but behind the scenes, Moscow was worried. The new sanctions threatened to upend Russia's carefully built networks. Europe had thrown its biggest economic punch, targeting not just Russia, but its most powerful ally. The stakes had never been higher. The world waited to see how China would respond. Would Beijing retaliate or seek a compromise? The answer came quickly, and it wasn't what Europe expected. China's response sent shockwaves through global markets. The stage was set for a new front in the economic war. Alliances were shifting, and uncertainty gripped capitals from Brussels to Beijing. And the fallout would be felt far beyond the oil markets, touching economies and lives around the world. What are sanctions really? At their core, sanctions are a form of economic pressure, tools that countries use to influence the actions of others on the world stage. They're economic punishment, meant to force a country to change its behavior without firing a shot. Instead of military conflict, nations use their economic power as leverage, hoping to avoid bloodshed while still achieving their goals. The main tools? Trade bans and financial blockades. These measures can target entire industries, or specific companies, and sometimes even individuals. Cut off a country's access to key goods and global banking, and you squeeze its economy. Everyday life can grind to a halt, with shortages and inflation hitting ordinary people the hardest. The EU tried this with Russia, banning exports of everything from semiconductors to ball bearings, vital for military hardware. These bans are designed to cripple a country's ability to wage war or maintain its industries. Financial sanctions are even tougher, blacklisting Russian banks and making it nearly impossible for Moscow to pay for imports or sell its oil. Cutting off access to global payment systems like SWIFT can isolate a country from the world economy almost overnight. The oil price cap was a clever twist, using Western control of shipping and insurance to limit Russia's revenue. But sanctions are leaky. No matter how strict, there are always cracks in the system. Determined countries find workarounds, buying goods through third parties, rerouting trade, or using friendly banks. Creative solutions and backdoor deals keep some money and goods flowing. It's a global game of whack-a-mole, with new loopholes popping up as fast as old ones close. Enforcers are always one step behind the latest scheme. And sometimes, sanctions backfire, hurting the countries that impose them as much as their targets. Economic pain can ripple out, affecting allies and global markets. The EU was about to learn this lesson the hard way, as the pork panic of 2025 unfolded. Suddenly, the cost of food and basic goods soared, and political pressure mounted at home. In economic warfare, nothing ever goes exactly as planned. The world is interconnected, and every move can have unexpected consequences. China's role in this unfolding drama is a delicate balancing act, requiring both caution and strategy at every turn. Since 2022, Beijing has stepped in to support Russia economically, filling the gap left by Western companies and eagerly buying up discounted Russian oil, keeping Russian trade afloat, even as the West pulls back. But China's own economy is deeply intertwined with the West, especially Europe and the United States, and it simply can't afford sweeping sanctions like those that have hit Russia so hard. So, China treads carefully, offering Russia trade and rhetorical support, but stopping short of direct military aid or massive headline-grabbing investments that could provoke the West. When the EU sanctioned 2 Chinese banks, it was a direct challenge, a public warning that Europe wouldn't tolerate China's help for Russia, and a signal that the stakes were rising. For President Xi, ignoring these sanctions wasn't an option. The world was watching, and his response would set the tone for China's next move. He needed to show strength and resolve, but without risking a damaging trade war with Europe that could hurt China's own economic interests. A tit-for-tat bank sanction would escalate things dangerously, potentially spiraling into a broader conflict neither side wanted. China needed a response that was sharp, symbolic, and above all, safe. A move that would send a message without triggering economic disaster. The answer? Hit Europe where it hurts, but not in the boardroom, in the barnyard, targeting a key European export. The stage was set for a surprising counterstrike, one that would catch many off guard and ripple through European agriculture. And it would come in the form of pork, an unexpected but powerful lever in this high-stakes geopolitical chess game. China's retaliation was swift and strategic. In August 2025, Beijing banned all EU pork imports, citing phytosanitary concerns, a thinly veiled political move. The message mess with our banks, lose your biggest pork market. For Spain, Denmark, and Germany, the loss was devastating. Billions in exports vanished overnight. European farmers, suddenly cut off from China, faced plummeting prices and financial ruin. Protests erupted across Europe as farmers demanded action from their governments. China's move was brilliant. It hurt Europe's agricultural heartland, created political pressure in Brussels, and barely dented China's own supply. China simply turned to other suppliers: Brazil, the US, and crucially, Russia. The EU's united front was now fractured, with internal turmoil threatening its resolve. And Russia was waiting in the wings, ready to seize the moment. As European farmers struggled, Russia saw an opening. Years of building up its pork industry had paid off. Russia was now ready to export, and China needed a new supplier. When Beijing banned European pork, Russian producers stepped in, filling the gap and reaping huge profits. The timing was perfect. As EU sanctions squeezed Russia's oil revenue, pork exports to China became a vital new source of foreign currency. The demand didn't disappear. It just shifted from Europe to Russia. The EU's attempt to punish Russia had backfired, handing Moscow a lucrative new market. Putin could now boast of economic resilience and a successful pivot to Asia. The sanctions meant to hurt Russia had, ironically, made it richer. While pork grabbed headlines, a quieter battle raged: sanctions circumvention. Despite EU bans, critical goods kept reaching Russia, thanks to a web of intermediary countries. If you can't sell to Russia, sell to its friends, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and others, who then pass the goods along. Exports of key items like bearings to Turkey soared, while Turkey's exports to Russia doubled. Kazakhstan became a crucial hub, with EU exports of sanctioned goods skyrocketing there before quietly moving on to Russia. The trade routes grew so complex that Kazakhstan stopped publishing detailed data, hiding the true scale of the shadow trade. This undermined the sanctions' purpose, letting Russia's military keep sourcing Western components. The EU was stuck in a game of whack-a-mole, chasing leaks it couldn't plug. In a globalized world, as long as there's a willing seller, buyer, and middleman, trade finds a way. Sanctions, it turned out, were never airtight. The sanctions saga created clear winners and losers. European pork producers lost their biggest market overnight, sparking political headaches for the EU. The EU's own policy backfired, causing economic self-harm and exposing the limits of its power. Russia, meanwhile, gained a new export market and a propaganda victory, showing it could outmaneuver Western pressure. China emerged as a strategic winner, retaliating effectively without risking a trade war, and deepening its partnership with Russia. The sanctions, meant to isolate Russia, only pushed it closer to China, strengthening an anti-Western bloc. The episode proved that economic weapons can have unpredictable and sometimes self-defeating effects. In this round, Russia and China came out on top. When the dust settled, the Great Pork Conflict of 2025 revealed a messy truth. Economic warfare is never clean. The EU's bold move backfired, hurting its own farmers and credibility more than Russia or China. Russia turned sanctions into opportunity, opening new markets, and scoring a propaganda win. China flexed its economic muscle, punishing Europe while strengthening ties with Moscow. The real losers were European farmers, and, ultimately, Ukraine, as the sanctions failed to deliver the intended blow. The world is no longer unipolar. Power is diffuse, and every action has unpredictable consequences. The logic of "we sanction you, you get weaker" no longer holds in a world of shifting alliances. The story of Klaus and his pigs is a warning. In global trade, your best intentions can come back to bite you, and there's always someone ready to profit from your pain.